The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Young American Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Demister.
And I'm your co-host, Riley Murphy.
Kenny is not with us today. We're going to try to get him on some future shows. He had a scheduling issue where he does actually have class in the mornings around the same time, so we'll have to try to figure that out. This week we're going to be talking about the two police officers who were ambushed in the Los Angeles County, and then some Biden.
Some Biden, for sure.
Biden. And not in a positive context like Jurgensen. Just keep that very clear.
Yeah, we're not a fan.
No, we're not a fan by any means. So what night was it? Was it Friday night?
Saturday night.
Saturday night, there was an individual who ran up to a patrol vehicle of two Los Angeles County Sheriff deputies and just opened fire on them. We don't really have any details about it. We can't really find too much about it. We can't find the officers' names.
It had to have been at least 5 shots taken.
Yeah, I believe I actually saw her name on Instagram somewhere this morning. But from what we just did, like
I don't think
minutes
they're releasing
ago,
the names.
yeah, I don't think they're publicly releasing the names of the deputies. Because it's still an active crime scene.
Still an active crime scene. They are currently in the hospital right now, in Linwood. And there's people protesting. Yeah,
they're protesting the officers' medical care. So they don't want the police officers to get medical care, which we can't do that.
They were outside chanting, I hope they die, and just ridiculous stuff.
It's gotten to a point where they don't want equality. They don't want, like the protesters, they don't want equality. They don't want peace. They just want their way.
Yeah, because at this point, this is a situation where the officers hadn't done anything.
They're just sitting in their car.
They're sitting in their car, and
I mean, those officers might have been attacked because of what maybe a previous case that happened, maybe something.
Or just what's going around the whole country. It's just
unprovoked.
People, yeah, exactly. Unprovoked hate to cops. I mean, provoked or not in certain scenarios, but.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not a huge fan of law enforcement, but I'm also not a huge fan of violence. So,
well, when it comes to that, like I can agree with that, but at the same time, it's like that situation. They were sitting there doing, nothing wrong at all.
They're humans.
They were just sitting there, and they were attacked and shot. Granted, I don't think they're going to die. They said they're looking like they're going to recover. But
I mean, they're humans. You think about it. They have families. They're just like me and you. The person who shot them, they're essentially the same. They have families, they have people who love them, they have a job to do, they care about things. They might have different opinions, but that doesn't necessarily mean that their lives don't matter, or that you can just go out and, expect that an unprovoked attack on two peaceful officers is going to be supported.
Yep. One of so there's two officers sitting in the car. One was a 34-year-old mom. And the other one was a 24-year-old sheriff's deputy.
That's pretty young to be a sheriff's deputy. I know in the U.S. you're only allowed to be a police officer as soon as you turn 21 and, you pass the academy.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think they're both fairly new.
Was she his training officer?
I'm not 100% sure. I don't think that information's out there yet.
Yeah, they weren't paying attention, so it sounds like they're either going over something. I mean, if you watched the video, it happened pretty quick, but if somebody's kind of walking up outside somebody's car, I don't know about you,
right,
but
you would think they'd be trained
not even. If I'm looking down at my phone and I see something moving across my car, I'm going to look up for at least a second. At least what I'm thinking is that from the video, I mean, I'm no expert on watching this stuff. I can't analyze it. I wasn't there, There's going to be a lot more information coming out than what we've even can talk about. There's more information that are coming out daily
and
about this.
The videos that were out there, I mean, I only saw one. It seems like it's the only one out there right now, but it's a very short clip.
Yeah, it's just surveillance video from what looks like to be like a street surveillance for like traffic, maybe even for like the news or whatever.
I mean, granted, I'm curious what would have happened if there was no cameras at all, how they would have gone about that.
Yeah, but at least now they kind of have a description where the guy ran off to, how it kind of happened, how quick it happened. They can see. And now they don't have to try to get the officers' testimonies who may or may not be, able to give them testimony at the moment. Which is a good thing that they had the cameras there. But when it comes back to, they really doesn't look like they're paying attention. It could have just been, a field training officer telling the new rookie, like, hey, this is what happens in this instance, or, we just went through a traffic stop, look at this ticket. They were maybe showing them something, or maybe he wasn't a rookie, but that's what I'm kind of stipulating.
It could have been anything. They could have been taking a break,
It could have been taking a break.
Yeah,
but obviously what's clear is that they weren't really paying I mean, they didn't have super good situational awareness. Obviously, they're pretty relaxed on what they were doing. They weren't really too worried about getting ambushed or people being around them. It did happen in Compton, which is notoriously dangerous area.
Yep. There was a reporter. I'm not sure who he was associated with, but he was saying that he was mentioning something about the corrupt officers in that area, which I don't know. There's no information to confirm, how that was related, but
it's actually interesting if you go on see the Netflix or whatever, and you look into the shooting of Tupac Shakur and Biggie. There's a series on it. They actually name off officers who were involved with that whole thing from Compton, and it was specifically Compton and the corruption within that city, and it was 4 or 5 officers who were gang members that they knew of.
I mean, a city like that, there's definitely going to be some of that going on. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you look at
Boston's
Salem.
It's definitely going on. There's been some stuff in the past for sure. There's been some big almost gang related officers involved in the Boston Police Department.
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere. Wherever there's a position of power and opportunity, there's going to be someone exploiting
especially in big city areas.
More specifically then, because it's easier to mask yourself. There's more of you. There's more, I mean, there's thousands of cop in Boston versus 50 or 60 in a small town.
There's always going to be some bad officers.
Yeah,
there's always going to be bad people.
Well, it's like a lot of I've been watching the First Amendment audits on YouTube, but I'm not a huge fan of them. But there was just one in particular that I thought it popped up in my suggested, and it was Dallas port officer assaults man and gets away with it or something. And essentially the video, they were just people who were walking around the port of Dallas on the outside, and a female officer who was elderly walking, and the guys were walking single file line. She bumped into one and pushed the camera, deliberately grabbed his camera and pushed it to the ground. And he walked over to one of the supervisors who was walking around and talked to him earlier and let him know that he was a sergeant and was like, hey, that officer over there just assaulted me. Here's the video. And his exact words were, well, you can't talk to me about that. You have to talk to somebody in uniform. So he goes over to somebody to talk to him in uniform. And that sergeant goes, no. He has other duties. You're going to have to either call the non-emergency number or go in and file a complaint. That's where I'm like, okay, well, maybe he's not a bad cop. Maybe that female officer's a bad cop. But then you have to look at it and say, well, the good cop in this instant is protecting the bad cop. He could easily just say, okay, it's an assault, no matter what grade of assault it is, an assault's an assault. That police officer who is in uniform, who I was just about to walk up to if I was putting myself in the cameraman's shoe, now you see the sergeant saying, no, he's not going to help you. You're going to either have to call the non-emergency number or go somewhere else.
There's too much backing up of officers in the wrong because I feel like most officers don't want to put another officer in a bad position where they're going to get in trouble, lose their job and stuff like that.
It's that whole family mentality.
Exactly. It is a family mentality. Salem Police Department. Sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, it makes you just as bad if you know that there's a bad cop doing something bad, right? And you pride yourself on being, there for the people and protecting the people, and you're, in my eyes, you're just as bad as them. If you're going to hide a bad officer and you're a good officer, you might have not done anything bad in your career. You might have not written a bad speeding ticket once in your whole career, right? But as soon as you
don't speak up
when you know there's bad police officers, that you're just as bad as them.
Even if it's something small.
Well, it's your duty as a police officer to protect your community. And if there's somebody who isn't doing right by being a police officer, actually doing the opposite, he's exploiting his power, then it's more so your duty to actually...
You're harming the community.
You're harming, yeah. And on top of that, that's why there's such a gap between the people and police. Because something like that, when you see some police officer, push somebody out of the way because they're walking on the road or whatever, because cops having a bad day or doesn't want to be filmed. Doesn't matter. You're a public servant. You can be filmed or anything. You should know your own department policy, code of conduct. And then on top of that, when we go to talk to somebody who's a good officer, it kind of puts a bad taste in the public's mouth when you go to talk to somebody about something and you just brush it off because, well, another officer did something bad.
Everyone's looking at you like, why aren't you speaking up? Why aren't you doing something about this?
And you're not exactly going out of your way to say, I'm not going to help you because she's a fellow officer, but you're
brushing it off.
Yeah, you're basically... Your actions speak louder than words.
You're trying to avoid it. But back to the California ambush, Trump had mentioned that if the officers or one of the officers had died, there's going to be a fast death penalty trial. Just, I think, to make a point of this can't continue.
Yeah, I think they're going to go back to that whole like capital murder thing where if you kill a police officer, you're going to be a death penalty. I think Texas was the last state to have that.
And it's going to be a fast trial.
It's going to be a fast. Well, that's the thing. You do have a right to a speedy trial, but when you have the president saying it's going to be fast, I mean, it might be a little too fast.
But it's going to happen. That's the point that they want to make.
And I don't necessarily 100% support that. You know what I mean? Like an eye for an eye is the whole world will go blind. You know what I mean? If you do catch this guy, sure. Does he deserve to die? I mean, I'm not going to bring up a whole like religious thing. Like, well, like
I'm concerned that with this happening, there's been some people are going to hop on this as almost like a trend.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
It already has happened. There was an Air Force veteran who went out and shot. I think it was like 3 or 4 officers in around the same area. And you know, kind of associated with like a liberty movement per se, but he was like on the, you know, the far, using that special term we like to, you know, talk about, use as jokes. He took it seriously, and he went out on his own and was doing some very bad things to some non-violent people who weren't aggressing towards him. And, you know, they might have aggressed towards him in their career or in the past, not directed towards him, but somebody else. And he just went out and started shooting cops. And, you know, it's something you don't do, especially if you pride yourself on being like associated within like a freedom oriented individual. You pride yourself on being peaceful as well. You know, like I'm peaceful, you're peaceful. If there's no one being hurt, you know, there's no crime, there's no victim, there's no crime. It's kind of, you know, what we look at. And in this instance, there was 2 victims. Like, this is an actual crime.
I mean, yeah, two victims that were just, I mean, yeah, they were on their job, but doing nothing. They were just approached. They were ambushed.
And it doesn't matter
attacked.
if you're a law enforcement supporter or not. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna come out and say I'm not a huge law enforcement supporter, like whatsoever. But in this instance, like,
I don't. Yeah, exactly. I'm never gonna support.
I'm never gonna support someone who is paid to infringe on my rights, whether they took an oath to protect them or not. Your actions speak louder than your words, of course. But at the same time, I'm never going to go out and I'm never going to cheer for someone being hurt when they didn't deserve to be hurt. I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to say, you know, whatever's going on between the
That's what gets me is the chanting of "I hope they die." Like, it's like where are these?
Well, where's the counter process in that instance too? Like, where are the Proud Boys and where are like the libertarians? And
but also, can you really be proud of standing outside of a hospital protesting and blocking, you know, ambulances and hoping people lose their life? I mean,
I don't understand how anyone. I mean, like, unless it's like a child predator or something.
Of course, I'll cheer on that. You know,
feet first, right in the wood chipper all the way. But like,
bring out the wood chipper.
Yeah, bring out the wood chipper. But in that instance, where there's 2 police officers that are injured for doing absolutely nothing besides just sitting in the police, I can't get behind that whatsoever. I can't even remotely get behind that. If it's an instance like what Duquesne Lemp happened, where, you know, maybe Duquesne Lemp decided to meet the officers with equal force and officers got hurt, like Duquesne got hurt, maybe then I'll be like, you know, shit happens. But when there's 2 police officers sitting in a car not doing anything,
yeah, I mean,
can't get behind that. And it's not to say that I'd get behind anyone getting hurt anyway. It's just to say that I can get behind somebody defending themselves against anyone,
of course,
but I can't get behind somebody who's going to attack.
Well, this was a blatant attack. It was, you know, I'm curious if he had in mind, or if it was just he had seen the police car there, and or if it was like, because how long were they sitting?
He could have been somebody who wasn't on his meds. You know what I mean? He could have been somebody who had a long run-in with police officers. He could have been somebody who maybe thought they were there to get him because, you know, he's a schizophrenic. He had a warrant. He was on drugs or something. Maybe he thought those police officers were going to come and arrest him or whatever. Or, you know, like you said, he could have just been sitting there and looked at the cops and said,
The officers that were injured in the car at the moment, they were able to you know, call for backup fairly quickly. But I'm surprised that I'm not surprised that he had gotten away in an area like that. Sounds to me like there's a lot of officers on duty in the area.
Well, they were just sitting there too. Like,
exactly.
You know, you don't just sit there unless you got someone nearby to, like, you know, cover up what you're doing. Like, you usually don't go on break. I mean, I'm not a police officer. I haven't been through any of the training, but like, I've trained with quite a bit of police officers and I've talked to them. And from what I understand, it's kind of like when you go on break, you generally go to, you're at the very, very short break, bathroom break, whether it be, or if you are on a break, there's generally somebody else there in the area that can, cover your actions or your call. So like, hey, we need to get here now. Obviously you're still going to go, but there's also going to be somebody else around that general area.
We don't necessarily know what they were doing.
And every city's different. Every municipal department has different policies. Like, Salem's policy is going to be different than Pelham policies, and they're right next to each other.
Town to town.
Town to town. It's going to go from agency to agency. So Los Angeles Sheriff's Department has different policy than
I'm not
Police Department.
too informed on what their policies are, but
if you go on their website too, you can look up like their code of conduct, policy book, uniform regulations, like all that fun stuff. Like
at the end of the day, though, they were just sitting there. They were on the job. We don't know if they were doing something productive or just on a break. But
I mean, again, when it comes down to it, is like coming from at least my standpoint, it looks like it's a field training officer trying to explain something, maybe show something, maybe talking to the other officer, at least from my eyes, and that's why they weren't paying attention. They're doing something important, whether it be like classroom importance, whether she be teaching them like a valuable lesson or something, or they could have just been on Facebook being like, hey, watch this funny video, and then next thing you know, some asshole comes up and starts shooting them.
And Biden already came out the next morning or whatever it was, trying to push gun control again.
Well, that's the thing. When you look at California, I'm pretty sure the Ninth Circuit Court, one of the individuals who was during the Rodney King riots, I believe, in LA, he was on top, and it's a famous picture in Koreatown. The young man holding I think it was the M1 carbine, I think it was an M1 carbine. He actually grew up and became a judge. And it's funny because he's a picture for like gun rights advocacy, and like he's the picture for like when you see any meme on Facebook and you see the rooftop Korean, you think of, that dude. He's actually the Ninth Circuit judge who just looked at California and said, your magazine ban is unconstitutional, wiped it out. And now you can actually, if you're in California, you can obtain magazines that are larger than 10 rounds.
Yeah, and I mean, Biden mentioned specifically high-capacity magazines.
It's not going to do anything, what I mean? I can carry one 30-round magazine, or I can carry three 10-round magazines, and you know what I mean? It only takes me a half second to reload.
But it's the same conversation over and over again.
And I think that debate died this year. If you look at how many new gun owners, your platform is completely, I don't think he's actually, when you look at the people who make the rules on firearms, you notice they don't look at firearms whatsoever. They don't know anything about firearms. They don't know different calibers. They don't know different fire control groups. They don't know the laws. They don't know the laws that they've even written. Someone's written for them in the background and they've passed them. That's how you can tell that, they don't know shit. Because if they did, they would already know half the things that they talk about. Kind of ridiculous. Biden got into an argument with that union worker up in Michigan, and was it Michigan? I think it was
Possibly,
Michigan.
It might be.
And he referred to an AR-15 as an AR-14. He said he was gonna come and take our assault weapons, that we don't need a 30-round magazine for hunting and blah blah blah. And that's not what it's meant for. I mean, the firearms regulation on hunting, unless you have a varmint permit or a exterminator's permit in certain states or something to help with the livestock, like if you're hunting wild boar, coyotes, or porcupine, that's the only animals. If you're not doing it for sport, if you're doing it for reason, that's when you have no weapons or magazine restriction. Now, if you're hunting waterfowl, can't use lead shot, has to be steel. You can only have you can't hold more than 3 rounds in the tube. That's the federal limit on hunting. Same thing with deer, bear, anything like that. Unless you have that, special permit where you can go out and it's not really special. It's just a permit where you go, you apply for it, you can get coyote and stuff. But
and for the most part, I thought the conversation did die this year, but there's always going to be someone fighting for it.
Well, it's like the one kid.
They're always going to try to bring it back, but I mean, I'd say we're in a better place now. At least better conversation with more people on board.
Well, it's that one kid down the road who bought the AR-15, never shot it, right? Kept it for 2 years, sold it, and then made an Instagram post saying that he got rid of it because he didn't need this weapon of war, and he owned one, so he knows what it's like, but he never shot it.
Yeah.
And then that's the only reason, in my opinion, why the argument has stayed alive this long. is because people who buy these firearms
Aren't informed.
are scared of them, won't use them, but want one because of their own personal safety, right? They're that type of person that's like, well, I don't agree with guns, but I'm going to go out and get one.
Right.
And then
Which happened a lot this year.
That's happened a lot this year.
I have a feeling, 50-50 in the next year or so, a lot of the people that had purchased guns may sell them or get rid of them.
I'm going to go to a firearm. It's kind of like a beginner's firearms class. It's like a concealed carry and like home defense fundamentals, which like I've done in private classes, but I've never really gotten like the big certificate which I would need to go to those. So I'm only doing it so I can draw from concealment at the shooting range because I'm sick and tired of not being able to do that. So I'm taking this class so I can draw from concealment at the indoor shooting range. And I'm actually kind of curious to see how many new people are going to be in this class. And a lot of
I'm sure there'll be quite a few.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to look. And I like seeing new people get into these classes because then, hey, there's actually someone who bought a gun and is learning how to use it. They're not just going to throw it in their closet for their kids to find and get hurt later down the road, or they're not going to take it and hurt themselves because they never got, training on it. I'm actually kind of curious to see. So we'll get back to that on next Monday.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see who's like,
I want to see the demographics.
Who's someone that's been shooting like you for a while, and who's brand new to the whole.
Like who just turned 18 too, because there are always going to be new gun owners. Like who just turned 18 who could finally buy that rifle, or who just turned 21 who could finally buy the handgun, because this class it's a pistol class. So
right,
I'm probably going to be like one of the youngest people there.
Yeah, I'm curious to see. Kind of like, do they want to come in just to educate themselves? Are they planning on shooting more? Are they planning on just?
I think the whole behind the class. It's rated for concealed carry, but as a broad, I think most people are looking at what happened with like Kyle Rittenhouse, the protests out in Portland, police officers in Los Angeles County are now thinking to themselves like, holy shit, this could be me. This is going to be me. I need to, prepare myself, because if you think about it, it can happen, right? If you can think about something, it can happen.
There's a lot of it going on.
There's a lot of things going on in this world. And I've talked to a lot of, people, it's different. When they buy handguns, they're generally looking to carry it, keep it in their purse, their car, or whatever. People buy rifles, they're generally looking to keep it at their house.
Or even with handguns, yeah, I'd say the majority are probably looking to carry, but there's definitely a few that are just going to have it safe at home.
Well, I talked to
but at least some are taking the initiative to educate themselves and learn the safety and everything about it.
Yeah, I talked to a water truck guy, and he delivers waters for pool, and he had like a little .38 revolver or whatever, and he was like, I started carrying that in the truck because this is the first time I ever thought that like someone was ever going to stop me or hurt me out of my truck. And then he's like, that was the only, I've had shotguns, hunting rifles, handguns, and stuff like that, but he's never had an, in quote, like semi-automatic, a sporting style rifle. And he went out and bought like a MP22 whatever, and when I'm at the job, and he shows me it in his truck. He's carrying around an AR in his water truck because he's afraid of people, stopping him.
There's a lot of people out there like that now.
Yeah.
The 360, they weren't even for guns, and then now I need it.
Yeah.
They feel like they need it.
It's again, people are always going to want to harm you, and they're either going to harm you with what they have. It doesn't matter if they have guns accessible. Sure, they're going to use guns. If they have cars accessible, they're going to use cars, sticks, stones, their fists. They're going to do it. If they want to harm you, it's the moral of the story is they're going to do it. Now,
I have a feeling a lot of these, there's going to be a lot more situations like this in the coming months.
It's going to be, it's risen.
It's still going.
It's going up and up, and that's why the class I'm taking specifically is through the United States Concealed Carry Association. And for anyone who listens who concealed carries or owns a firearm, I highly, highly recommend going and buying their insurance. I just bought it, and essentially what it is it's legal counsel. It's provided legal counsel. It's provided like civil protection in case what happens with Ryan.
Kyle Rittenhouse.
Kyle Rittenhouse, not Ryan Kittenhouse. Yeah, Ryan Kittenhouse. Dyslexia. And go out and buy it. It's perfect. It's a perfect protection tool. As soon as anything happens, basically what they tell you on the back of this card is you use your firearm in self-defense, you call 911, then you call the USCCA. And it tells you what to specifically say when, you call 911. You don't go out you don't go out and happens with the, Kyle Rittenhouse situation and, you call a police officer and say, I just shot somebody. You don't say that. You just say something like, I've had to use my firearm in self-defense. That's all you say. That's all they want you to say. That's all you should say.
That's all you need to say. Yeah. If that was your intention, that's what happened. That's That's where you start.
Be as broad as possible. You don't want to get into detail until you have your lawyer next to you. That's literally what they tell you. So I'm just spreading that advice and go and kind of look into it. But
I mean, I support almost like. How do you think it would be if everyone had a gun?
I think everyone would be just a little bit more polite.
100%. I mean, it could go a different way, but I think if everyone had a gun, it would be a different story.
I think at first everyone would be a bunch of dicks, and then they'd figure out.
But a lot of people couldn't pull off what's going on now if, say, obviously, example, everyone in the United States had a gun. I mean, I think more situations would happen, but I think a lot of them would be.
It's funny because I kind of look at it that way. Because like when I go around, I have no clue who does and doesn't have a gun, especially in New Hampshire. Like, you could walk up to the 70-year-old lady and she could have a Glock. You never know.
Yeah, but if someone's going to, do something or harm someone or shoot someone in a public area, there's going to be, say everyone had a gun, there's going to be 17 people there. Well,
it's like Texas, man. Like you go down to Texas and it's like 3/4 of the population carries a firearm, right? Not that much, but it's pretty damn close. And then, you go to like what happened to like the Draw Muhammad contest. I mean, granted that probably was a trap, but basically in Texas they held the Draw Muhammad contest. Some guy showed up, tried to shoot him. Before he got like his second or third shot off, there was like 4 or 5 individuals shooting at him from the Draw Muhammad contest. So you show up, just yourself, then you get shot up by 6-7 Texans.
Yeah,
that's how it works.
If that was nationwide.
The Texas church shooting that happened. Remember the guy chased him down?
Yeah.
He literally grabbed his AR-15 to chase down the guy with his AR-15.
We need more of those people.
Yeah, we need more Texans is what we need. We need to...
Come to New Hampshire.
We need to disperse the population.
Sort of. We need more Texans. Sort of need more Texans.
Sort of need more Texans.
We can agree with some things they do and other things we can go like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Only in Texas.
Yeah, only in Texas. Only in Texas. I will absolutely open your barbecue and firearms with warm welcome arms. But, other than that, like, I don't know.
Yeah, firearm
your
parties.
dry heat you can keep. Next week,
firearm parties out there.
Well,
yeah.
Let me ask you guys a question before you wrap this episode up. Going back to one of the earlier topics you were talking about with regards to police and bad cops in certain situations, with more of this going on and more of a heightened awareness and potentially more overreaction from police departments, one of my fears is that you might end up having another Christopher Dorner situation. And you guys remember the Christopher Dorner story.
That's the gentleman who was sitting in his car and went to go grab his ID and the cop. He told the police officer.
No.
Oh, no, it was a different one.
The Christopher Dorner situation, he was an LA police officer. He ended up getting fired because he filed a complaint against the training supervisor who supposedly kicked the criminal, whatever you want to call him, a couple of times. And he filed a report saying like excessive force. And he ended up getting fired because the witnesses didn't go in his favor, whatever the situation was. And then he writes a manifesto and he's targeting cops and he's going out and shooting and then ends up having that gun battle at the cabin in the woods. He was a cop. Yeah. He was supposedly a pretty good cop. Gets fired. He feels like he was kind of brushed aside unfairly, everything like that, and then took matters into his own hands. That's one of my concerns that you're going to see as a bad reaction from a cop when all this stuff's going on. It's a lingering fear because we've already seen it happen.
Yeah.
So there's lots of them resigning. Just they want to stay away.
Yeah.
They don't want to be fired.
They don't want to get themselves in trouble for who knows what.
Yeah.
I mean, that can happen. It's going to happen. You're going to see more of that.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that should be a lingering fear for everyone.
It is. It's a huge.
It's going to be harder to
myself. On top of that, I mean, if you see the I don't want to say it. I don't even know what word to use. Just dyslexia, dysgraphia, whatever. Can't get the word out that I'm thinking of. Like I have it on the tip of my tongue, but I can't say it. But essentially, the divide between the public and the police department, we're going to see. I think at some point, not like a war, but such a divide where people are going to want to avoid the police at like any cost necessary.
Yeah.
And I think that's essentially what's slowly happening at the moment. No one wants to talk to police officers.
Don't you hear that about certain communities in this country where? Certain communities in New York or Chicago, it's always don't talk to the cops, avoid them at all costs, right. Don't give them and that's part of a problem, and if you extend that out further, could it create a bigger problem?
Well, that's also a thing. I feel like in those communities, they've felt the negative side of police, and that's why they're like that.
Absolutely.
They've already felt the corruption. That's where the corruption has started. That's where all the corruption goes from. That's where the police exploit the weak for the drug money. That's where the cops will go and plant drugs in people, like we've seen Los Angeles County. What there was like 8 videos from 2017 up until 2020 of one sheriff's deputy and his partner That was the body cam footage that they found, not the body cam footage that they couldn't even recover, of like him planting weed, coke, heroin, everything that he found on like and they asked him, how'd you get it? And he said, well, I went to, when I worked the beat and I'd, walk, Hollywood Boulevard, I'd find some rich white dude who had some coke on him. I'd take it. And then next time I ran into someone else who maybe looked like they'd have it, I'd throw it in there.
Mm. Scary stuff.
Yeah, scary stuff.
And that's
I feel like it's going to be a lot harder to get, like good cops joining.
Well, we know somebody too.
It's going to be harder to get those good cops and working for us.
We know, he's one of my brother's friends growing up. I'm not going to name names, but essentially what happened was he went through all the proper steps. He's wanted to be a police officer since he was a little kid. Finally fulfilled his dream. His personal training officer maybe wasn't doing something very good. Maybe like it was affecting the cognitive ability of the police officer, XYZ, wasn't doing the right things on the job, maybe some things that they should have got fired for. He decided to report it, and he got, again, brushed under the table. You didn't complete your training.
A lot of it happens within the police department too.
Yeah, you were supposed to get 126 hours, you're missing that by 30 minutes.
Even if one of the officers does something wrong, say they do report it, they are being a good officer, they do report it.
Well, now
it goes to the higher ups and they brush it aside.
Not even, they look at the kid and they say, shit, well, this stuff leads back to me too.
All part of the team.
Once they figure out that this officer is doing something bad, they're going to try to figure out how long they've been doing it for. Then you're trying to figure out, well, she's been doing it for XYZ. Who knew about it? They're going to figure out who knew about it, and then they're going to get her out of here. It's just sucks. And
it does suck.
That's where you see the whole like back to blue or brothers in blue like mentality, where like they'll do anything for each other because they're a family, and like good for you, but at the same time, that's not how it was meant to be. It's not meant to be a family. Yeah, it wasn't meant to be a family. As bad as it sucks,
right.
Police officers were never meant to be a family. They were there to protect and serve the people. They weren't there to protect and serve each other. And that's kind of where
that just backfires.
Yeah, it just.
But that's never going to change, though.
No, never going to change.
It can get better.
Unless you have like a police department in the United States specifically dedicated to getting corruption, like its own department that has nothing to do with counties, state, anything, just its own entity. They dedicated to.
But also, it's only a matter of time till corrupt people.
Exactly. Until, hey, you're a bad cop and I'm a cop too, like whatever. And it's gonna, you know what I mean? But if you look at other countries, there are sometimes, the way they treat their corrupt cops, they get rid of them immediately.
Right.
And then you see there are still corruption, but there's less corruption.
I think that would make a point here.
Yeah.
If it wasn't so, debatable.
Again, if it wasn't so against what we did as Americans, it's we look at something.
But if we went hard on that right now, and any cop does something wrong, out, you're not going to see it as much.
Well, that's
a hard thing to do.
People are in the old West are running sheriffs out of town and stuff like that, and people are taking, I'm not saying you should do that.
But back then they were taking it into their own hands.
Well, they also knew when the sheriff wasn't doing something, they'd get rid of the sheriff. They'd strip him his badge, give him.
But
they wouldn't.
But all the other officers would be on board. No.
Well, sometimes there's only one or two. Marshals, whatever, town marshals or deputies in town. And then you have the townspeople just telling the sheriff, you're going to leave because we don't want you here anymore.
It's a different world.
Let's get a new one. Yeah, it's a different world. I think we should be doing that with politicians. But, if your politicians aren't working for you, go move them off. Doesn't necessarily have to be violent. It can just be an overwhelming amount of people saying, we don't want you here anymore. And
polite public tar and feathering. That's not violent.
Yeah, no. You didn't get hurt, sort of. Like 1 degree burns, 2 degree burns. That's fine though.
Not a big deal.
No, not a big deal at all. Nothing. Some Rite Aid burn cream can't heal for a little while.
Look, just put a little aloe on that.
Yeah.
All right.
Some crude oil. Next week we're going to be talking about more Joe Jurgensen, Joe Biden. Yeah.
Joe Jurgensen. We'll bring her back into the circle next week.
If anyone has any contact with her, tell her we want her on here. I've emailed.
We really want to get her on.
I've emailed this. Whatever it was, info@something.com, that her Facebook person sent me twice now, and it's come up no response. So if anyone's out there who has any, maybe her or her VP, Spike, let me know. Please email me. We'll throw that up in the description as well. If you can get that contact information, and or you have any questions for us or want us to talk about anything specific on the podcast, feel free to shoot that to us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week.
Yeah. Have a good week. Stay safe.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.